This is our wilderness survival, and almost all of the survival situations that people get into are either day hikers or hunters that get lost. And so a lot of times when I teach these classes, I teach with that basis. And right now we're out here in the woods, and we're going to simulate that we got lost and we don't know where the trail is. One of the first things that's going to happen, and nobody's immune, everybody does it, the minute you realize that you're not on the path and that you don't exactly know where you're at, there's a panic going to set in. Now the first number one rule is you gotta stop and sit down and get control of your emotions. And once you get control of your emotions, then there's a couple things we can do. A lot of times it doesn't take somebody very long before they realize, you know what, I'm not on the path. And at that point, what you want to do is stop right where you're at and mark the spot. You know, if you want to use your coat, or if you have a backpack or water bottle, any type of thing that you can do to mark that spot. Then what you're going to do is you're actually going to you're going to go away from that as long as you can. You never want to lose sight of that marker. And you want to go out as far as you can from that marker and then start doing circles around that marker. And a lot of times you'll end up coming across the path that you were on. And at that point, then you're out of your survival situation. You can go back and retrieve your marker and can either continue on or go back to where you were. So that's a little trick you can do. Now, if you've done your circle and you didn't come across the path, then what you're going to do is come back to your marker. You're going to find one of the biggest trees you can find. You're going to go up that tree, and then there are two areas that I like to talk about. One is a little more populated area, and then I like to talk about some areas where you could get into where there's just nobody forever. The first area where there's some population, when you're up the tree, you're going to do a couple things. You're going to look and you're going to listen. And what do we be looking for? Well, we may look out and we may see some smoke coming up. Well, that could be your own camp. You know, so that, and basically we're not going to leave this spot unless we have a good reason to do so. Now, some smoke from a campfire, you know, get a direction on that, that would be a good reason. You know, you may look out, you may see a highway. You know, you may see any types of roads would help you to get back to civilization. And, you know, you may see off in the distance, you may see an open field, and you look a little closer and all of a sudden you realize, you know what, that open field has a fence around it. Well, that would tell you this farmer's field, and you might want to head on over there and see if you can find a farmer. So anything that you could see that would tell you civilization would be a good reason to head in that direction. Things you're going to do up there, you're going to listen. You know, you may hear some dogs barking, you may hear some kids playing, you may hear road noises. Any of these types of things that would tell you, oh, there's civilization. You know, that's some help over there. And you could go that direction. Now, I live in Michigan, and we have a lower peninsula and an upper peninsula, and there's areas in the upper peninsula that you can get into where there's just nobody forever. And if you get lost in one of those situations and you're up the tree, two good things that you can run into that would be very helpful. One would be a railroad track, and the second would be a power line. If you can find one of those two, those are very helpful because you're going to start following them. You may not know, you know, which direction to go, but just pick a direction and start following it. And you're going to come to civilization at some point somewhere if you start following those. Now, there's a second reason why they're good, in that if you get lost and you don't come back, let's say you were camping and you got lost on a trail, and you don't come back, then the people that are there are actually going to send the cavalry out to come and find you. There's going to be searchers out there. You know, there's going to be all kinds of different people. You know, some of them are going to be trained and some of them are not. There's going to be most of them probably are just, you know, want to go out and help find this person that got lost, and so they're out there. But there are also going to be people in the air. And those guys know what they're doing. And if you're in the middle of this woods, let's say there was a helicopter that was off over there. Now there's no way that he's going to be able to see you through all this stuff. But if you're out underneath a power line or on top of a railroad track, now those guys in the air can see you a whole lot better. And so those would be good things. Now, let's say you're up the tree and you didn't see any civilization and you couldn't find anything that would give you an indication that there could be some help. Then what you're going to have to do is actually set up camp right where you're at. So you're going to come down the tree, and then what you're going to do is you're going to build a survival shelter. Okay, we in our survival situation, we've been here for 3 days. A lot of times when the searchers come, they usually will find someone within 72 hours. And so, when you've been there, you're 72 hours, roughly 3 days and so on. Then you have to make a decision. Do we leave camp and try and walk out, or do we stay here a little bit longer and see if they come along? And here's one where we can't really, I've decided, okay, I'm going to try and walk out. Now, I really can't tell you, okay, here's textbook on what to do. Which direction to go. Well, every situation is going to be different. If you happen to know something about the geography of the land you're in, let's say that I happen to know that off to the west there's a major river, or off to the west there's a road, and it's a big road. And if I head west, I will run into it sometime. Maybe north, there has to be a huge lake. And I know that if I head straight north, I'd run into that. These types of things, if you happen to know those, would be helpful. And now if you're out here in a survival situation and you didn't have your compass, how do you tell direction? Well, go look at our north, find a north and south line, and go look at, find an east to west line. I'll show you a couple of techniques there that you can do. Most people will say, well, the moss grows on the north side of the tree. Well, that's true to a certain extent. Moss is going to grow on the side of the tree that gets the least amount of sunlight. But let's say that you're on a clearing, and this is to the east, and you got a tree line, and when that sun comes up, you're going to find that the actual west side of the tree gets less light than the rest of it because of the light coming through on the east side exposure. And so your moss will be on your northwest side instead of north. If you look, a lot of times the strongest limbs will grow towards the heaviest light. And so your strongest limbs a lot of times will point towards the south. And you can kind of look at that. These are only general that you can do, but go look at east-west lines, look at finding south and north, and look at those techniques, and those will get you on an exact line. And so those are good. So we decided, okay, we're going to walk out. We have to decide on a direction, and then we have to find that direction, and then head that direction. Now, we've decided that we're going to go west. And so, if you've been here for a while, you realize that the sun comes up in the east and it tracks on over and goes down in the west. That's going to give you a general idea. One of the things that you're going to want to do now, when the cavalry's out there looking for you, they have people searching, they have guys in the airplanes, and they also have dogs out there. And these dogs are very good at what they do. And so it is a very good idea to leave something behind in your camp that you can go ahead and go without that would give the dogs a brand new sniff. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave my sock behind, and that way the dog, if they happen to come across my camp, the dog can get a brand new sniff, and it just gives them that much better way of finding you. Another thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want cavalry to know which direction you left, because you want them to know where you're at, so that indeed they can catch up with you. And so it's a really good thing to make markers, and an easy marker to make. Get a Y stick and another stick, and this right here, even an untrained person, when they come across this, would realize, oh, Mother Nature didn't make that, and I know which direction he went, or which direction she went. And so do this. Now I get questions from time to time, well, you know, how often do you make those? Well, how bad do you want to get found? And I would try and make them often enough so that they don't lose your trail trying to find the next one. Okay, so these little markers are something that are very good. They slow you down, but they're going to speed up the guys that are trying to find you. Another thing is they're going to have guys in that group that are trained, and they know how to spot signs of where you went. And so it's a good thing as you're going along to go ahead and drag your foot once in a while. Those guys are going to know that real easy. Okay, it's another good thing that as you're going, break off a branch in the direction that you're going. When they see that break, they know that. Now, some of the untrained people, they may not spot that, but the guys that are trained, they're definitely going to spot that stuff. So do those kinds of things as you go. Make markers, and break limbs, scuff your foot, all those types of things as you go will just help them to find you. Now, if you're out in a prairie and you don't have sticks, what do? Well, we're going to go in the prairie and we'll show you what to do. I actually live in the middle of the Manistee National Forest, and so I have to go inland about 60 miles before I can really find a prairie. And so in order to show you what to do in a prairie, we're just going to simulate that. We're going to use my yard. But what you're going to do in the prairie to mark your trail is you're going to use 3 rocks. Prairies have a lot of rocks. You're going to find 3 rocks. You're going to have a base rock and another rock on top of the base rock. Now that alone will indicate to someone, even an untrained person would realize, you know, that's not Mother Nature that did that. And then the 3rd rock you're going to use as your pointer. And so 1 rock on top of another indicates there's a trail, and then the 3rd rock indicates which direction you went. And you want those searchers to know exactly where you went, because they're the ones that are going to help find you and get you back home. So when you're in a prairie, you're going to use 3 rocks, 1 on top of another, and then a pointer. And that's what you're going to do across the prairie when you don't have a bunch of sticks to make pointers with. So 3 rocks, good little technique, and keep that in mind. That could save your life.